Salomon Benzimra. He was born in 1943 in the international zone of Tangiers, now Morocco, and studied in France, where he graduated with honors as a chemical engineer from the École Nationale Supérieure de Chimie, University of Bordeaux in 1965. Semi-retired since the early 2000s. He's focused on economic and financial analysis of industrial projects, and he became very, very interested in Middle East affairs. In addition to French, Spanish, and English, Salomon also reads Hebrew and reads and speaks a bit of Arabic. In 2009, he co-founded Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights with Goldie Steiner, who's with us today. He is an author of an important book. It's called The Jewish People's Rights to the Land of Israel. He's written, I have a copy myself, and it's great. It's currently available in an Amazon Kindle edition, but you can download a free Hebrew version on the CILR website at cilr.org. Now, although suitable for any mature reader, the book was written specifically to prepare Jewish high school students to defend themselves against the defamation, lies, and distortions about Israel that many face in university. The book is fact-based and educational, not political, and it debunks the current perception of Jewish Israelis as occupiers and settlers. CILR works in close communication with the highest echelon of the Israeli government and has the support of the Minister of Strategic Affairs and Deputy Prime Minister Moshe Yaalon, whose endorsement in the book is very eloquent. And this is what the Deputy Prime Minister had to say, quote, Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights deserves to be commended for this welcome effort to educate the public about the Jewish people's indisputable rights in the State of Israel. This volume should be read and shared by all those who favor justice and peace in the Middle East. And Salomon worked closely with Howard Grief before he died in this book. And Howard gave his blessing as well. It was Salomon's work and three of his presentations at Israel, at least three, at Israel Truth Week events that made me realize not only was I badly misinformed about the strength and the source of Israel's legitimacy under international law, but also the tremendous potential power of building a counter-propaganda campaign around a simple narrative of Jewish people being owners, not occupiers, because of their land title deed from the original two-state solution, the Mandate for Palestine. You notice how I'm repeating those words over and over? You memorize that. That's what we did in Caledonia, a very simple narrative. Gary McHale taught me that. Now, back to Salomon, though. Salomon asks the same question I do. If somebody in your neighborhood claimed that your house is built on stolen land, wouldn't you hold up the land title deed to the property? Well, he wants to know why doesn't the government of Israel act likewise to dispel the false notion of occupation that is doing so much damage to the honor of the Jewish people. He is reluctant to call himself an expert. He's incredibly modest. But after watching him deal calmly and effectively with tough questions from a Muslim audience, I can assure you there is no such thing as a question too difficult for him to handle. I like to call him my professeur. You'll see why if you know him. Now, Salomon and Goldie, we meet from time to time. We spend several hours, hours at time, and they're a little cynical about whether their work was having an effect or not. And of course, we all kind of think that at different times, and you wonder what's happening. And well, on Friday night, and I did mention this earlier, I was contacted by Doris Epstein of Shalom Toronto, asking me to appear on a new online TV show that she'll be producing and hosting. I'm going to be on the first episode. And thank you. And during the conversation, without me prompting her, she told me that the work being done by Salomon and Goldie was having a big effect in Israel, where people are being inspired by their leadership from afar. This narrative, yes. You think that, Gary McHale taught me that you know, we just do the best we can every day. And we don't expect miracles overnight. And then one day you wake up and there's a miracle. So you just don't know. Miracles happen one step at a time. You just have to try and do the right thing every day. So I hope you'll welcome me or join me in welcoming Mr. Salomon Benzimra.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your introduction and your kind words. And this is really a great audience. As every time I participated in Israel Truth Week, I am impressed by the audience, and I am impressed by the organizer, Mark Vandermas, who really deserves an applause. And I must say, he is not alone. He is helped considerably by Debbie, his wife, who is his silent partner. And also, a word must be said about Ilana Schneider, who has participated and organized putting this all together. What I'm going to tell you today, and Mark advised me that I only have 15 minutes, or otherwise I will be beheaded if I overgo the schedule. So I am a very stringent schedule here, and so I will be short, summarizing important matters, but I will summarize it as best as I can. The thing that I want to say first is that almost everything I knew and I learned about Israel in terms of international law, I owe it to Howard Grief. This gentleman was a real gentleman. I never met him. I have exchanged information with him for about 4 or 5 years, and I have now about 1,500 pages of exchanges of emails and documents and questions. And I can tell you one thing: every time I am discussing with somebody in terms of a very thorny issue, I wish I had the opportunity to consult Howard Grief. So may his name be remembered for a long time. Okay. So what I would like to say today is I would like to talk about two things. The foundations of our rights in international law, where do they come from? We have to look at the origins of it, as I said, in no more than 5 or 10 minutes. And then I would like to tell you about what are the opponents of Israel, what are their claims to destroy what we are advancing. So to understand the legal rights of Israel, where they originated, we have to go back to the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire looked like this, with all kinds of different colors, depending on times of conquest, from the 1300 to the 1600. And that is the apex of the Ottoman Empire at the end of the 17th century. After that, it began to shrink. And by the time of the beginning of World War I, the Turks only had the areas included within the Red Line in 1914. That means, and here you can recognize Palestine. Palestine is here. Palestine, Syria, Mesopotamia. These were not countries, these were just geographical regions, and they correspond very much to the fertile crescent of the Middle East. So at that time, in 1914, the war started, and Turkey had the very bad idea to join Germany and Austria against the Allies. And what happened at that time, the war lasted 4 years, but before even the war ended, there were significant diplomatic activities between Arabs, between Jews, the British, the Americans, the French. Everybody had some kind of concoction, political concoction to cook. And what I would like to Oh, what is this? Even before the end of the war, there was, for political reasons, the British Empire decided to support the Zionist organization and to issue the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration is just an expression of British policy. It doesn't have any impact on international law. It just said two things. First of all, that His Majesty's government looks with favor to the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine, and second, that nothing should prejudice the civil and religious rights of all the other non-Jewish people living there. Those two things. So it was quite a revolutionary at that time, but it was, as I say, it was an expression of British policy, which was supported by the French, which was supported by the Americans, which was even supported by the Arabs, the Faisal family, the Hashemites in the Hejaz, but it never had the imprimatur of international law. A few months later, and also always here before the end of World War I, President Wilson of the United States made a famous speech at the joint session of Congress in January 1918, and this speech is known as the 14 points. Among the 14 points, 2 points are particularly important. First of all, he said, we should not go to war anymore as we have been going for centuries. We have to first try to negotiate, and we have to create an assembly of nations in which all the conflicts that nations may have could be ironed out before getting into military confrontation. And the second point is the era of colonization is over. Now we should not be able to colonize people anymore. We have to pay attention to the self-determination of people. That means to their own will. They should have equal weight to the considerations of state. At the end of the war, the war ended in November 1918. A few months later, the Supreme Council of the Allied Powers organized the Paris Peace Conference. The Supreme Council of the Allied Powers comprised 5 powers: the United States, Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. And these people, they had the authority to convene, because they were the victors in World War I, they had the authority to convene practically the whole world. There were 32 countries represented in Paris, to negotiate, to find out what do we do with the failed empires, German Empire, Austrian Empire, Ottoman Empire, in order to sort out the borders and so on. So the first item in the agenda of the Paris Peace Conference was the creation of the League of Nations, which corresponded to the will of President Wilson, and all the rest of the time they dealt with the questions regarding Europe. And the League of Nations was governed by a covenant, and this covenant had a particular item, particular article, most important, which is Article 22, which defined the mandate system. That means that instead of colonizing a newly acquired territory, the developed country, whether it is France, Britain, the United States or other, should take this territory as a trustee in order to bring all the benefits to the population living there after they are at a certain level of development. They didn't have time, the Supreme Council didn't have time to deal with the matters of the Middle East. They convened a year later in San Remo, Italy, which is a beautiful little town in northern Italy. James Supreme Council of the Allied Power with the exception that the Americans were not there anymore because the Americans didn't fight Turkey, and also the Americans by that time they realized that they didn't join the League of Nations, so they were only attending this conference as an observer. So that means that the main participants there were Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. They met in San Remo, and then in San Remo something amazing occurred, which is that the Supreme Council of the Allied Power combined the proposition of Balfour to create a Jewish national home in Palestine with the mandate system, which not only represented some kind of view with favor or tried to do it, imposed on the mandatory power to implement it. That means that in San Remo, the mandate system was applied to the Balfour Declaration, and therefore the Balfour Declaration had to be put into effect. It was mandatory, and it is why in San Remo in 1920 the Balfour Declaration became an act of international law. And 2 years later, this in San Remo, of course, what they decided mainly was that Palestine, the region of Palestine, would be given to the Jews, and Mesopotamia and Syria, the other parts, will be given to the Arabs. And everybody seemed to agree with that, even Faisal agreed with that as well. And 2 years later, the San Remo resolution was codified in the Mandate for Palestine, which is the document that Mark was showing to you, and there is in his israeltruthweek.org. When you look at the former two-state solution, the original two-state solution, you will find this mandate with an explanatory note there. I recommend that you visit it. So basically, this is what the origins of the legal rights are. Means Jews have national rights in Palestine. The non-Jewish people in Palestine have all civil and religious rights. The other Arabs who were living there, they got the bulk of the territory in Syria, which became eventually Syria and Lebanon, and in Mesopotamia, which became Iraq. Plus, they already had the Hejaz, which is the western part of Saudi Arabia, bordering the Red Sea. This has always belonged to the Arabs. And so they had about 99-point-something% of the full territory in comparison to the Jews. The question now that we are going to ask, because those of you who have attended probably my previous presentations would have heard already that. But the question that I have now is, what is our opposition? What do people say against that? What is it that they are challenging? And this is what the opponents claim. They claim many things, but I just picked up just a few, which they seem to be recurrent. They come all the time, particularly among in campus, in academic professors and so on. The first one is to say the Allied power have no authority to create a Jewish home in Palestine. I must tell you something. I heard that from a top professor who for the sake of his reputation, I will not disclose. He is one of the top professors of the major university on the eastern side of the United States. And he was telling me the Supreme Council, these people there, Lloyd George, Alexandre Millerand, President Wilson, Francesco Nitti of Italy, all these people, they are all white, racist, imperialist, colonialist, fundamentalist, religious, and therefore whatever they say is just meaningless. So it would be nice to just find out whether he has any reason to say that. Let us just evaluate here the authority of the Allied power. Look at Europe in 1914, just before World War I. This is what it looked like. The red areas Yes, you see that in red. The red areas are the Central Powers, which were led by Germany, but it included also Austria-Hungary, which were united, and Bulgaria, a little bit of here near the Black Sea, and of course the Ottoman Empire. All these were the Central Powers against the Allied powers, which were all the green. Britain, France, Italy, even Portugal joined later, and Russia. And the United States came in 1917. This is what Europe looked like in 1940. Now, look at what happened at the end of the war, after all the treaties were negotiated. This is the new map. And you will find something interesting is that in 1914, here in this part of Europe, you don't see Poland. Poland disappeared. Poland has the capacity of having disappeared from the map several times in history. And there was no Poland in 1914 because between the Germans in Prussia and the Russians, they absorbed Poland out of existence. And here you have a Poland that appears. Here it is well, I lost my map. Here it is. This is Poland here. And not only that, but there were new states that were created. Everything done by the Supreme Council of the Allied Power. These are the 5 examples. Poland re-emerged. Then Czechoslovakia was created out of nowhere. There was never a Czechoslovakia before. There was a Bohemia and Moravia and then the Slovaks on the other side, but they never were a coherent state. The Supreme Council of the Allied Power conferred sovereignty to this territory. Hungary became a separate country from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And here you have, this is Poland, and this is, of course, in the north here, the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, which were absorbed before. They became a new independent, and then Yugoslavia, which united also all the Slavs of the south. This is the power of this Supreme Council of the Allied Power was such that in terms of, because not only they were the victors and they had political power, but they had also judicial power and power of disposition of the lost territories of the vanquished countries. And so there were, all these new states were created by treaty. And then I wonder here, if the Allied powers had the authority to remodel the map of Europe, why wouldn't have the authority to remodel the map of the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman territories, especially that Israel was not the only one. There were Arab countries that were created by the power of this Supreme Council, and nobody talks about that. Everybody is just as fixated on Israel, and nobody realizes that the rest of the countries of the Middle East, which are going very badly now, but that's another story, they were created the same day. So, to answer this question here, the Allied power had the power of disposition in both Europe and the Middle East, and therefore stating that the Allied powers had no authority whatsoever is completely wrong, because the authority is evident everywhere in Europe, in Africa as well, because at the same time that the Europeans lost the war, the Central Powers lost the war, Germany had a lot of colonies in Africa. All these colonies in Africa, according to the Traité de Versailles, were just given to mandates as well, to France, Belgium, and England. So this is for the first option, the first challenge. The second challenge is quite a semantic challenge, I would say. They are saying, yes, the mandate has black on white the proposition that a Jewish national home should be established in Palestine. But it doesn't mean that it should be established in all of Palestine. That's what they say. And this is like for instance, this is an example I was discussing with Mark the other day. If somebody tells you, you have built a business in Montreal, does it mean that you have built it in all of Montreal? No, you built it in some corner of downtown or somewhere, but it is not. It doesn't mean that the whole thing. And they try to apply the same mentality, the same nonsense to the Jewish home in Palestine, saying if it is in Palestine, it is just in some part of Palestine, but you cannot claim the whole Palestine because that was not intended. So let us observe what is the reality here. This is the mandate, and this is the mandate cover that you will find in Israel Truth Week page. And please do that, download it, it's most interesting because you have the 28 articles of the mandate plus the later memorandum that the British sent to the League of Nations, which is most interesting as well for different reasons. So this is what the mandate says in the preamble. It advocates for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. But, okay, so let us focus on in Palestine. But it also says in Article 9 that there will be a judicial system in Palestine. In Article 13, they say that the holy places have to be respected in Palestine. And in Article 14, they say that the different religious communities in Palestine should be free to exercise all their worshipping needs and so on. And so, in all these three, there is no possibility to understand in Palestine as other than in the whole of Palestine. Because you cannot create a judicial system in a part of Palestine. You cannot say that the holy places are only the holy places around Jerusalem and not the ones in Nazareth or elsewhere. And if you have different religious community in Palestine, it means that the different communities, like you are talking about the First Nations in Canada, it's not in a part of Canada, it's in all of Canada we have First Nations. Or we have any kind of other community. And so here you have religious communities in Palestine, mean in all of Palestine. And so here, if you count them, we have 14 instances of the expression of the phrase in Palestine, which leave no doubt as to the totality of Palestine. So this objection to me it's a fallacy. It's a semantic fallacy trying to play on words, but it has captivated the imagination of a few people, and they are following it. And you will see that on the internet all the time that it was never intended to have the whole territory. What's the third one? The third one is that okay, you have the Allied powers had the real power to create a national home. Fine, and the Jewish home in Palestine is in whole of Palestine, fine, but the objection is that the Jewish national home was never intended to become a state. That is the latest objection. So you have to find, this is at the third echelon, you find that it has never associated. Okay, so, of course, here we have all kinds of documents written by Lord Balfour, by Prime Minister Lloyd George, exchanges with Emir Faisal, with President Roosevelt, exchanges between the French and the British, with all recognize that sooner or later the Jewish national home will become a Jewish state, or as the British call it, a Jewish Commonwealth, like it will be part of the British Commonwealth. But the most important reason is to see what happened to other cases here. Here is the map of the region that is concerned with mandates. You had three classes of mandates that are anticipated in the mandate system. The first class is for territories that are almost on the verge of being sovereign. They only need a little help from somebody else, but it is the societies, economically and socially, they are quite developed and they could accede to independence pretty soon. This was the case of Syria and Lebanon, Iraq, Jordan, and of course Israel. All these countries became independent in the 30s and 40s. because it didn't take that long, because they were already pretty developed. So you have already here 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 Arab countries that originated from mandates, and they became independent sovereign states, plus Israel, number 5. The second level of countries are the ones that are not that developed, and you would need a more sustained assistance from the European countries. And this is in Central Africa, Togo and Benin, Cameroon, Rwanda and Burundi, and Tanzania. They were all colonies from Germany. Tanzania was given as a British mandate, as a Tanganyika at the time, and it became Tanzania. Rwanda and Burundi was given to the Belgians, and they acceded to the independence in the late 60s, and Cameroon was given to the French together with the Togoland, which created eventually 2 states, Togo and Benin. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other states that were created, and they originated in mandates, even at low development level of mandates. And there is a third level for countries that are really, really either remotely located, or that are very poor, or they don't have any resources. And even so, Namibia became independent in 1991. Papua and New Guinea, and even the island of Samoa, which was called at that time Western Samoa, it became the independent state of Samoa. So if you count them all, the mandate system generated 14 independent countries. And so the notion of saying that the Jewish national home in Israel is the only one that shouldn't lead to a state. Whereas we have here Namibia, Samoa, Papua New Guinea, and all the other 13, which turn into state exactly with the same mechanism that was decided either in Paris at the Treaty of Versailles, or otherwise in San Remo for the Middle East. So that is the nonsense that we are facing, and I am just saying here just to keep you focused on this. Very soon, we are probably going to have the collapse of the peace process. This is the strenuous effort. I hope so. Yeah. This is the strenuous effort that John Kerry has been undertaking for a few months. He calls it the framework, but it is going. There is no way that this peace process can be implemented. And just after the peace process collapses, I hope that the government of Israel will put sufficient resources. And I hope as well, and this is hope beyond hope, that the Jewish organizations will wake up and eventually contribute to the dialogue here positively, rather than being always on the appeasement side. And finally, when this happens, we are going to have this conversation open, hopefully in the media, with big headlines, with big resources, about saying enough is enough. We have a state of Israel which is recognized by international law. It went through all the hoops and loops, and now the peace process has been tried with the best will of the Israelis for the past 22 years. It hasn't succeeded, so this is what we want to present to the world, who most of the time they don't know. And the thing is that these are the objections that you are going to see. And I urge you to be prepared, because this is what you are going to be reading in the media night and day in the near future. Thank you.